Hello, another podcast episode, and I want to talk about fairy tales, folklore, fables, all of it. Just all of it. Yeah, because for some reason it's problematic. These stories that have lasted centuries and have been enjoyed for centuries, now all of a sudden they're problematic. Because a small group of people have decided that they're problematic, but will give no reason why. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You know, I grew up watching fairy tales, reading fairy tales, and yeah, I grew up with the generation that had fairy tale theater. And my favorite episode will always be Cinderella. I don't know why. There's just something about it that I just don't know. And a very close second is of course the Snow White, because of course Vincent Price, and there's a lot of things in there that is just hilarious to me. Look, my grandma, uh, she recorded all of the episodes. I think all the episodes, but I just remember we would we would watch them because the show would be on Sunday night on PBS, and but we would watch it whenever we wanted. And yeah, and I remember the VHS would start with Snow White and then Cinderella, and gosh, I don't remember what came after that. Yeah. I mean, but anyway, so we had that, and then there were quite a few fairy tale uh shows, cartoons and everything. And even the shows, well, like when I was reacting to Legend of Zelda, and there was the obvious Princess and the Frog episode. So yeah, there were a lot of those episodes that in the um in I think every show. And um so and of course the animated movies for Disney were being released to VHS, but first they were being released to theaters. So like Great Mouse Detective was a double feature with Peter Pan. And we didn't know that when we went to see it. I just remember my dad, he was like, "Hold on, Peter Pan? Of course we're staying for this. This is delightful." What is happening? This is great. And so, but all of a sudden, these are a problem. And and I suddenly realized it's it's in the last decade. It's just been in the last decade because this wasn't a problem when Tangled was released. It wasn't a problem when Princess and the Frog was released. It's just been in the last. So, because trust me, I've been trying to do this video, this particular episode, like in the last 2 weeks. And so I've gathered up a lot of information. Probably won't get all of it in here, and but I was realizing what's going on. Okay, we are being told that these fairy tales are problematic. We are being told that we have to hate these and that they have to be modernized. Now, I did a video about modernizing the Odyssey and how stuff from today does not belong 4,000 years ago. That's what they're doing. We have to update it for the modern audience and oh my gosh, I will get to that. Trust me, I will so get to that. I cannot wait to get to that moment. Okay, a lot of these fairy tales and a lot of these stories go as far back as ancient times. I mean, Aesop was from ancient Greece. Okay, that's how old his stories are. All right. In fact, Disney did a movie called Bug's Life. That's an Aesop fable called Grasshopper and the Ants. Now, Walt Disney himself, with one of his silly symphonies, did Grasshopper and the Ants. The silly symphonies have a whole bunch of these fairy tales, folklore, all of it. And we have laughed, we have giggled, we have enjoyed them. They've been ran on the Disney Channel for several years. I watched them. You know, like Old King Cole and Rumpelstiltskin, all of those stories, those timeless stories. Now all of a sudden they're an issue. They're a big old problem because a small group of people have an issue with them. Okay, I want to bring up the consensual kiss because this is so fucking stupid. Look, I want to make it very clear right now. I'm all about consent. I have had people try to violate consent with me, and they learned the hard way, you don't do that. Yeah, they were very sore between the legs, finding out that they don't do that. Shouldn't have done that. No. So yes, I am all about consent. You do not violate that. But this is a fairy tale, people. This is a fairy tale with magical creatures, magic, and spells and witches and ogres and and talking animals. You remember in Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe where the oldest brother says, "Well, the beaver told us we had to go this way," and his sister says, "The beaver shouldn't be saying anything." Yeah. Yes, he had accepted it. He had accepted Narnia as what it was. She was still not there yet. This is the thing about consensual kiss. In a fairy tale, you're shoving your personal feelings into this story. It's a fictional story. Okay, so they go after my girl Ariel, and I'm pretty sure I talked about this in the Little Mermaid episode, but I'll bring it up here as well because this is just out of control and stupid. Okay, to quote Potato Head, did y'all take stupid pills this morning? I mean, honest to God. When I went and saw the movie, my dad took me to see The Little Mermaid. I was 7 years old and I understood what was going on far better than people in their 50s right now. That's where we're at. The fact that they rearranged the live action movie for consent. They changed the song Kiss the Girl. Oh, I'm sure Lin-Manuel Miranda is so proud of himself, but he shouldn't be. He should be embarrassed. I'm going to explain it, okay? Ariel saw Prince Eric. She rebelled against her dad. She went to the sea witch, had her voice ripped out of her body, went up to the surface, tried to get the prince to kiss her. Sebastian talked for her by singing that song so they could live happily ever after. Like, honestly, the fact that I think it was down in San Francisco where that a cappella group refused to sing the song because it was problematic. I hope they feel embarrassed and they are still feeling shame over doing something so idiotic. It's not problematic. It's a Disney song. And okay, as much as I love Great Mouse Detective, there's a line in one of the songs where he's saying, where his minions are saying, uh, he's the world's greatest criminal mind, and they say, worse than the widows and orphans you drown, you're the worst of the worst around. Yeah, that one should be banned. And yeah, when they're talking about how terrible Radigan is. It- that was in a Disney song, an animated Disney song. Uh, you're gonna overlook that, but you're going after Kiss the Girl, where Sebastian is talking for Ariel so that Prince Eric will kiss her. And Eric was looking for her. The only reason he stepped back is because he was looking for the girl with the beautiful voice. But she had her voice ripped out of her body. Don't tell me that all of these people did not watch this movie or read the story. Okay, she's a 16-year-old girl. This is what the stupid pills, man. Stop taking them. She's 16. Okay, remember when you were 16? Yeah, think back to when you were 16 and you saw that pretty face. Okay, she wants to be lip locked with Eric. And he made it very clear. This girl was the one he'd been looking for. Okay, it's they were both consenting. In these fairy tales, they're teenagers. Same in Snow White and because Snow White and Sleeping Beauty, it's the same thing. In Sleeping Beauty, she gave her a dress. If that isn't consent, I don't know what is. I mean, for gosh sakes, in that one, they were betrothed to each other. They just didn't know it. Okay, and after he killed Dragon Lady and went up to the tower and kissed her, oh, she was fine with it. She was in a coma. She wakes up and she's like, that's the guy. Oh man. She was still happy with it when they were walking down the steps, people. She, you really want to do the consent thing with a fairy tale. They were under magic spells. Even in Snow White, how is this lost on people? Now it's been a while since I've seen Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, but even I remember that the poisoned apple had that extra part to it where she would be put in a coma. It was a deep sleep. She wouldn't be poisoned and killed. If she were poisoned and killed, she would have never woken up. Y'all need to watch that movie again. Okay. Just, oh my gosh. These are stories that are filled with magic. Like I said, magical creatures and all of that. And you're seriously, oh my gosh. Again, this kind of crap did not pop up when it came to Tiana, and it didn't come up when it came to Tangled. Those movies, but now all of a sudden it's a problem. And they really go after my girl Ariel, and it's like, no, Ariel and Sleeping Beauty, my two all-time favorite uh princess movies, because I saw Sleeping Beauty when I was 3, and then of course uh we know how I feel about because I did the episode. And but I mean when it comes to Sleeping Beauty, people won't watch it with me because it's like my animated Newsies. It's I will quote it 4 lines ahead of the movie. It's just like and and then when it comes to Cinderella, okay, she wanted to go to the ball. She stood up to her stepfamily and said, by royal command, every eligible maiden is to attend. Okay, then the whole thing with the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo song, and she got to go. It was the prince that noticed her first, and as far as she knew, he was just some aristocrat there. She had no idea that it was the prince, and then the song is happening, they're falling for each other. They're by the fountain and they kiss. And again, I'm guessing she's a teenager. I don't remember how old Cinderella is supposed to be. And then the clock strikes and she leaves. When is the next time she kisses him? At their wedding. Again, if that's not I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be consent. Oh, geez. Yeah, so there's my rant on the on the consensual. It's it. Why? Why are you? And the funniest to me is when I saw Keira Knightley, where she's on this whole consensual kiss brigade, and I'm like, girl, you have no room to talk. You seriously have no room to talk because Elizabeth Swann in Dead Man's Chest just lip locked Jack Sparrow and used it as a distraction to shackle him to the ship. There was no consent there. I'm sorry, but your character? No. You, uh-uh. You need to sit down. Nope. You can't be on this whole thing because your character is against all of it. It's right there on the big screen. Oh, she used a kiss to distract. Yeah. I watched those movies a billion times. I mean, as soon as she started talking about the consensual kiss and like, oh yeah, the fairy tales are bad and everything, I'm like, oh hell no. Let's talk about what Elizabeth did to Jack Sparrow. No, we're not playing that game. Uh-uh. No, 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 no. Because And before people were like, well, it's just fiction. Yeah, so are fairy tales. Remember magic spells and all that? Nice try though. Not even. Not even interested in that argument. Anyway, so moving on from there. Yeah, the consensual kissing, I'm all for consent. I've said it before. But these are fairy tales. This- what's next? You're against the violence in them? I, that's the part that gets me. You're so butthurt over a consensual kiss, but the violence is okay. The fact that Maleficent is fine with killing a child, when you're 16, you're dead. Okay. Nobody has said anything about that. This this woman is cackling about murdering this this infant child. And everybody's like, "Oh yeah, that's normal." But consent to kiss, we we have to ban these movies because of that. We have to change everything because of that. Y'all are dumb. You all are seriously brain dead. Oh my gosh. If that's why you're wanting to change these movies that don't need to be changed. These stories do not need to be changed. You're just making up stupid crap to change them. And so I want to talk about that because I did the video that was modernizing the Odyssey. Okay. And I talked about this particular individual. I thought I had the tab up. I didn't. Okay. So I talked about Anne Dossier, and she had translated the Iliad and the Odyssey into French back in the late 1600s and early 1700s. Well, there was a gentleman by the name of um, Antoine Hodder de la Motte who had to give her drama over this whole thing. Yeah, Antoine was, oh man. So because the Iliad was the first one she released. Okay. And there were, and it introduced the works of Homer to France. And um, of course, during this time, there were a lot of clubs, literature clubs, and everything. And well, Antoine was a member of, it sounds like several of these clubs, and he was a member of the arts. Oh, yeah, he was one of those individuals. And it turns out he didn't understand the Iliad at all, but he had he made himself look bad when he did all of this. I mean, he decided to snatch up her translation, and because he didn't understand ancient Greek. Okay, make that clear. He didn't understand ancient Greek, so he took her translation and uh, then published a poetical version of the Iliad and altered it to suit his own taste, alongside another book that was stating the reasons why Homer failed to satisfy him. I, this is what people are doing now. They're pulling an Antoine. Okay. And I believe I said that in the video that I did about modernizing uh the Odyssey, is that because they don't like the thing, they want it fixed to make them warm and fuzzy. Okay. You can't do that. Okay. Just because you're one person that doesn't like it. So, for example, with with the Little Mermaid or now with Snow White, uh, because it doesn't fit your personal feelings and everything, you want it fixed. Screw everybody else. I want it fixed for me. Well, that's what Antoine is doing with Homer's Iliad. Okay, he hijacked the Iliad and did that. And yet everybody else understood it. Everybody else in this literature club understood it and liked it, but he did not care. Okay. He's even quoted as saying the fact that he went down in history as being this dipshit, this brain dead dipshit. He said of his own work that is actually hers, just scrambled because he doesn't understand ancient Greek. She does. He is quoted as saying, I have taken the liberty to change what I thought disagreeable in it. Yeah, people are doing that now. Disney Corporation is doing that. Maleficent is a perfect example of that. Okay. When you read The Sleeping Beauty, it does not have a backstory for Maleficent. The Sleeping Beauty goes as far back as the Middle Ages. Okay. It does not start with Tchaikovsky's ballet. Okay, when you actually, because trust me, I did a lot of research going through the backstory of some of these fairy tales, and it goes as far back as ancient times. Okay, so while we're on the subject, I didn't have a thing for that. And trust me, I saw The Sleeping Beauty several times. Being a former dancer, yeah, we had to go and see. I saw that one and I saw Swan Lake and the Nutcracker. Actually, the Nutcracker would come up would come here every year and the Eugene Ballet Company would have local studios be connected to it, and I got to teach some of the. So I was part of that one year, and so that was a lot of fun. That was lots and lots of fun. Okay, so Sleeping Beauty. Um, Early contributions to the tale include the medieval courtly romance of Persephorist. Now, it was published in 1528, but it actually goes back to the 1300s, written in French around 1340. And it's a long poem, one of those epic poems. And yeah, an extract from it serves as a preface in which refugees from Troy flee to the island of Britain and establish a new kingdom. Yeah. So I'll put information in the description box. I'm not going to go into full detail about that. So, but yeah, it goes into the uh goes as far back as that. It says a little bit here, this tale, a princess named Zelendine falls in love with a man named Troilus, which sounds very Roman. Um, Her father sends him to perform tasks to prove himself worthy of her, and while he was gone, she falls into an enchanted sleep. And yeah, and they have children. And there's also a gentleman that had, yeah, and then I need to get into that. I don't want to get too ahead of myself. But anyway, so getting back to Antoine, the thing is he doesn't stop here. I mean, like he says, of course, I have taken the liberty to change what I thought disagreeable in it. As I said, everybody um everybody is doing that. You know? And he just but he doesn't stop. She defended Homer. You know, she um and he just keeps going with it. It's like, well, his stuff is outdated. Wow, that doesn't sound familiar at all, does it? Because she was saying that the philosophy, because that Homer's work introduces science and philosophy and that's kind of thing of the ancient world. And he's like, well, that's just outdated and stupid. And he said, our modern science and philosophy is so much better, and we could learn nothing from them. Why does this sound so familiar? So, this is what I have to say about that. The modern audience doesn't exist because they're pulling an Antoine. The concept of modern is that you're doing something new. It's new technology, new ideas, new everything, new fashion, the modern era back in the 30s, late 20s and 30s is because automobiles were the main source of transportation. Okay, electricity had was now pretty much established and it wasn't so scary anymore. And seriously, look back at the pictures of with like wires everywhere and you know how poles have the telephone poles have like two um rows. They had like 10 back then and just wires everywhere. Yeah. You and so and skyscrapers were coming up, fashion was changing, and so yeah, it was a modern era. And of course with planes coming in, yeah, so you had flying machines now. It was a modern era. Things really haven't changed since then. We don't have flying cars. Oh, I said it. Well, I did the video, but it you know what? It didn't become a thing. So yeah, we don't have flying cars. Oh my gosh. Oh, if only, if only. Still waiting on that. But for as much as people talk about how they need to change these stories for the modern audience, they're they're pulling an Antoine because it's just for them. It's like there's a small group and they're like, these stories are outdated. Well, Antoine said that about Homer, and they're changing the stories just like Antoine did with Homer. Wow. So they're doing the same thing as someone did in the 1700s. What's so modern about this? I'm sorry. Um, I'm not impressed. I would be impressed with the modern audience if it were modern. This is outdated. Yeah. So stop it. Just stop it. Seriously. Oh, and to for anyone that's interested, there was somebody who actually stepped into the because Antoine wouldn't let it go, you know. So somebody actually stepped in and Madame Darcier and Antoine met at supper and drank to the health of Homer. They did settle. Yeah, let's all settle this. These these stories are fine. Oh my gosh. Oh man. Like for example, with the Little Mermaid, because I don't want to get too into it because I said what I wanted to in that episode. But the thing is that anytime somebody mentioned anything, it was like, oh my gosh, you're saying so much about a fictional character. And it's like, well, so are you dumbass. You're raiding the comment section and yelling at us for trying to point out an actual thing. Okay. The thing is that what we're trying to point out is that Hans Christian Andersen wrote this story. It seriously has nothing to do with skin color. Okay. It's a culture thing. Okay. It's insulting, is what it is. Disney is doing it some purpose. They always do. They're doing it again with Snow White, which I will get to as much as I don't want to. But there are tons of mermaid legends and stories in the Caribbean and in Africa. They could have done an entirely new mermaid story and they chose not to because it's like they enjoy this drama. Okay. That was the whole thing there. So yes, now they're doing it again with Snow White and the seven somethings. I don't know what's going. Okay, that's the thing. Like they announced Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, this live action Snow White, and Peter Dinklage got up on his soapbox and he says, I have to speak for the dwarf community. And at first I was like, okay, whatever. And then I was like, wait a minute. Is he in this movie? He's not in the movie. Why the hell is he even talking? So he took away 7 jobs from dwarf actors just because he decided to speak for the dwarf community and took away, yeah. And so there are dwarf actors who are pissed, and rightly so, by an actor who is not even in the movie. I'm just going to put this out there, Mr. Dinklage. There are people who only know you for Game of Thrones. That's the only thing you're known for. Um, and why are you speaking for the dwarf community? As if Warwick Davis and Tony Cox don't exist. Those two were in Return of the Jedi and several other things that people can list. Yeah, just down the list. It Yeah, that was the thing that floored me. I was like, wait, as soon as I saw that he was not in the movie, I'm like, so why is it that Disney is keeping with this whole thing of, oh no, they're magical creatures. Oh no, they're bandits now. Oh no, they're this. Oh no, they're that. They're whatevers. And Rachel Zegler is insistent that she is the first Latina Snow White. So it's Latina Snow White and so it's Rachel Zegler and the seven whatevers. There's gonna be seven Gonzos right there. Gonzo and his family just, oh my gosh. This isn't even Snow White at this point. Why do they keep calling it that? Oh man. But Disney is like acting like he's in this movie. I don't get that. That doesn't make any sense at all. Anyway, so then the set went up in flames. That should have been the point where they said, okay, we shouldn't do this because obviously we have angered the ghost of Walt Disney. But the, but they're still going with it. And so now they have Rachel Zegler, who her she's running her mouth faster than the Mach 5. And the reason why this controversy is constantly in the news. Yeah. And I've never known somebody to tank their movie before it ends up in the theater. That's not something to be proud of, but I mean, the other two movies that she's in bombed. So the fact that she bombed this movie before, wow, that's a whole new talent all on its own. I just don't know. So here's the thing. I didn't know who she was until all of this happened. And so let's break this down. Because I've never seen her act, but I have watched several videos about her and I don't like her. She's insufferable. She's absolutely I'm trying really hard not to call her what other people have called her because that's just not who I am. But it's really hard because wow. Um, okay. So she has been caught lying several times. Okay, so she said that she watched the movie and then she was called out for obviously she watched the movie and I mean there's just so many things. She's saying that her words are taken out of context. It's obvious that they're not. And she plays victim, she attacks the fans, she flips off the camera. I mean, it's the obvious formula because the actress who was in Cowboy Bebop did the exact same thing. There's a whole mess of people who do this, and it's usually the women who do this. I have never seen a guy do this. I mean, like, I remember when Justin Bieber spit on his fans. I think that's the only time I've seen a guy be so out of control and disrespect his fans. But it's usually the women who are just bitchy to their fans. And it's like they say something, they're called out about it, and then they attack their fans, say terrible things to their fans, and it's just when does it end? And then it's shocked Pikachu face um when the money isn't coming in. Like, why isn't that? Why? I don't understand. It's like, really? Oh man. Okay. Yeah. All right. Anyway, so here's the thing is, yeah, she's been caught lying and all of that stuff. Now, one of the things that people are like attacking her on is the fact that she is very vocal about how she hates um Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. She has a massive hate boner for it. And okay, she's not the first to not like the source material. Okay, I will give her a pass on that because I think I mentioned here on the channel about how Christian Bale uh when he was filming Newsies uh didn't like it. And to this day it's like that's not on my filmography. There are some Newsies fans who are like, yeah, he's warmed up to it. It's like he's Batman now. No, it's he's moved on. You need to as well. Um, but there was, oh gosh, what was that? I think it was when Robin Williams and Nathan Lane were promoting The Birdcage. They were on the Oprah Winfrey Show, and Robin Williams was asked why he did Toys, the movie Toys. And he said, "Oh gosh, that was just a paycheck." And so he was he obviously just wanted to move on from that. And yeah, so he yeah, there are celebrities who they do the movie and move on. It's an obvious no, I don't want to talk about that. I got the paycheck, moved on, we're done. I wasn't in that. What are you talking about? So, but I will agree that the fact that she is being so immature about it and being so open about the fact that she hates it, and there was somebody who was saying, talk about bite the hand that feeds you. Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's where she loses me. I mean, let's be honest, she's not the first celebrity to not like the source material. So it's a back and forth kind of deal. But yeah, she's not the first to not like the source material. It's a paycheck for her and fine, but she's anyway, I think I've made my point there. Now, she um she said uh that the prince is a stalker. I would love to go further with that, but she got like a tidal wave of backlash. I was actually surprised with how much backlash she got. I think she was surprised with how much back. And that's when it started, where she started attacking the fans. She started playing the victim. She started attacking the fans. And it's like, no, sweetheart, you said it. This is on you. Okay. And because this is where people were starting to see the cracks in her story about how she watched the movie and she was, and everything. And it's just like, nope. Yep. And so, but she cannot, she won't stop. And but that's on her. She also said, and one of the reasons why I wanted to do this, she was talking about the she calls it the cartoon. Cartoons are 3 to 10 minutes as they were in 1937. Of course, in my time, they were, because like Jason the Wheeled Warriors, given commercial breaks and everything, was 30 minutes. And so she calls it a cartoon. It was a full-length animated feature film, the first one ever to exist. Okay. And if it had bombed, Rachel Zegler wouldn't have a job right now. I think she needs to realize that. Bob Iger would not be CEO of anything. And in fact, the parks wouldn't exist. Wonderful World of Disney wouldn't exist. We wouldn't know who Annette Funicello is. My favorite movie, Newsies, wouldn't happen. You just go down the list of all the things, that outrage over Main Street Electrical Parade never happened because the parks wouldn't exist. You know, that's the reality of it. You also take into consideration, because I was talking to my friend about this, and he said, how long would it take if the full-length animated feature film had bombed and people would say, well, let's just stick to the 3 to 10 minute mark for cartoons. How long before people say, you know what, let's try that full-length animated feature film thing again? How long? I mean, would it be the 60s, the 70s, 2000s? So you think about all your favorite movies like Shrek. We wouldn't have that. Don Bluth started with Disney right out of high school with Sleeping Beauty. Sleeping Beauty wouldn't be a thing. So we wouldn't have movies like Anastasia and All Dogs Go to Heaven. We wouldn't have those movies. I mean, it's just it, those are things to think about. But yeah, Rachel Zegler wouldn't have a job because the doors would close because Walt Disney put everything on the line. This is not an exaggeration. Okay, I'm not saying this to be dramatic. The reality of it is the doors would close. I mean, Walt Disney mortgaged his house. He risked everything to make Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. If it had bombed, it had not become the success that it did. That's the reality of it. Thank goodness it became a reality, you know, not because I can watch Newsies and Anastasia and Shrek, but I mean, it is connect the fact that that movie helped to is connected to a lot having to do with the entertainment industry. And we just don't think about that. Okay. So, so yeah, these so people like Rachel Zegler is like, yeah, these fairy tales are outdated, when she's saying that this cartoon was made in 1937 and evidently so, she's segueing into, well, I need to modernize it, I need to fix it. It's up to me to do it. Yeah, she's gonna make another girl boss movie. It's not 2016 anymore. We don't care. Okay. Look, I saw the clips from Peter Pan and Wendy. Wendy was insufferable. She was nasty to her brothers. She was slapping Peter around. And when she was flying, it was like that was something that she needed Tinkerbell for assistance. And did nobody realize that she was basically taking credit for the fact that she was flying? Yeah, it's like this is a me thing. Yeah. And it just, you compare that to the animated Wendy, which her big flaw was that she's a teenage girl who has a big crush on Peter. That's why Tinkerbell and the mermaids went after her. And I mean it was a typical girl thing. I went to high school. The outcast girl was always picked on for having that crush on the popular boy. Why, why do you have to go after my girl Wendy? I mean, her strength was that she looked after everybody. Peter was banishing Tinkerbell. She stood up for Tinkerbell. She stood up for Tiger Lily. Peter's being an absolute boy, crowing like a rooster. And she's like, you gotta save her. The tide's coming in. And then of course she protected her brothers. Okay, what we're seeing lately is God modding. Okay, so whatever word they're using for that now, I don't care. Because the thing to do right now is to make up 50 bazillion words for a word that has existed forever. I don't understand it, but God modding is found in the gaming community, and you make a character that can't be killed, is invincible, no weapon can hurt it. Basically, the robot and Jason and the Argonauts, it's just, and it's, I mean, I don't know how else to explain it. So, and I would see it in the role play community too. When I was an administrator for role play, these kids would make these characters, and there would always be like the battle scenes, and the kid that would make the God mod character would be so angry because nobody wanted to battle them, and they'd be like, "Well, they're not," and it's like, "This is your problem, dude. You figure it out, okay? If you're don't come to us because you can't figure it out." Oh my gosh. But so yeah, it's God modding. Absolute God modding, because basically they're saying that, the women empowerment, women are all that and whatever, and it's like, yeah, but the woman just got stabbed with a lightsaber and survived. That should not have happened. Realistically, and I always, again, the comebacks. It's like, well, it's fiction. And it's like, as a writer, I have gone to uh seminars and classes and that sort of thing. And yes, with the fiction writing and that sort of thing, like when you're doing fantasy and all that, one of the things that you want to be able to have is a sense of realism. So while it's still fiction, there's still a sense of realism. Does that make sense? So for instance, I was watching the reactions to Rings of Power, and apparently there was this whole thing having to do with the characters standing at the center of this eruption of a volcano. This volcano erupted, and all the characters were standing in the middle of it. This ash was falling down and everything, and it was supposed to be all this drama and everything. And I guess that a lot of um the Rings of Power fans were defending it, that it was fiction. No, it's crap. No matter what, it doesn't matter what character you are, unless you are a Goron from Legend of Zelda or the rock biter from Never-Ending Story, unless you are an actual rock creature, even then you are going to be affected by the heat of that. Their bodies would blow up being at the center of that. It doesn't matter what fantasy. And every person that was trying to explain how that just did not make sense, and these weirdos who were shutting them down, it was like, you are trying so hard to make this work and making yourself look stupid. Because you have to have a sense of realism. I mean, like, it, it boggles my mind just how hard these people will run in circles. They'll run a marathon to make something work. And my question is why? You know, like you will defend something like that. Like these characters standing in the middle of a volcano eruption like that, knowing full well that the people did not survive uh, the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. Well, there you go, right there. Oh, well, that's different because Vesuvius is real. I actually had a an argument with somebody who tried to tell me I live in Washington State, okay? And they tried to tell me that when Mount St. Helens blew, it was just ash. No, it wasn't. Oh my gosh. It was my parent. I mean, like, I wasn't born yet when it blew, okay? But I have heard several accounts of the fact that the ground was shaking months before. They knew that something was going to happen. It was just like with Mount Vesuvius. They had been tracking it. The gentleman who his last words were, "This is it," the scientist, the young scientist. And there are so many people who say, well, he's a dumbass because he was out there. No, he died doing his job. Okay. Oh my gosh. You don't live here because it was sudden. It's easy to be a keyboard warrior and say, well, that guy was an idiot when you're 15 years old. And yeah, it's great. Anyway, went off track a little bit there. So, but the whole thing about it is that there has to be a sense of realism when you make these. All right. And the thing about it, like with Xena Warrior Princess and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, they didn't god mod those creatures. I mean, creatures, uh, those women. Characters is what I meant to say. I didn't mean to say creatures. Um, but they did not God mod. Okay, these are two women who um had vulnerabilities, much like I was saying about Wendy. Okay, they had vulnerability, even though you would think warrior princess, vampire slayer, nothing can bring them down. Well, in episodes they did. All of a sudden you would have these surprise episodes where something would all of a sudden they would be like, "Oh my gosh," and we would watch them overcome these vulnerabilities. That's the difference. Okay, because they were human. This God modding bullshit is just, it's not enjoyable to watch. Why would I want to watch somebody just be a robot? Like, oh, look, they're impenetrable again, just like the next episode and the next episode. And they're terrible to everybody that they come across. They're yelling, they're screaming, they're an insufferable brat. I could see that in a nursery. Yeah, so that's what they're doing. I I'm just not interested. Look, I saw women I saw empowered women. I saw it in my cartoons. Okay, I saw Gem. I saw She-Ra. I even saw it in DuckTales. Mrs. Beakley would tell uh Scrooge what was what. In in a lot of those cartoons, well, and even in Darkwing, there was his girlfriend Morgana. And I mean, you go down the list of a lot of those cartoons from the 80s and 90s, and the women were strong women. But everybody wants to look at uh the promo, and it's like, why? Nobody looks at the promo. It's like, oh, look, the girl was put behind everybody, and it's like nobody looks at the promo. Nobody. I never saw those promos. Seriously. And nobody cares about promos. And I love how, again, this is like I was saying at the beginning, you always nitpick over the dumbest crap, just like the consensual kiss. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about that. Meanwhile, you have somebody, you have a character who's talking about killing a baby, and you gloss over that, but this consensual, the consensual kiss, it's like, oh my gosh, it's not. Yeah, let's keep her in a coma forever, you know, for like 1,000 years, or until, she dies, which which is what Maleficent wanted, whatever. Well, let's just what what is wrong with people? I just okay. So so one of the things that I have been seeing through comment sections, uh because Rachel Zegler is like, I'm the first Latina uh Snow White, which they're saying that Snow White is a German fairy tale. I went down a few rabbit holes, I did some research, and that's not exactly true. Um, the Brothers Grimm collected these fairy tales. Okay. Um, and actually, there was a gentleman named uh, Giambattista Basile. I'm sorry if I say his name incorrectly. He was an Italian poet and fairy tale collector, and the Brothers Grimm actually praised him for his collection. Um, his collections include the oldest recorded forms of many well-known European fairy tales. Now, I came across where a lot of places were saying the European fairy tales. I really want to I really, really want to point out that a lot of these fairy tales did not start in Europe. Okay? Like Cinderella alone. There is, oh, what was it? Uh, Rhodopus is the is an ancient Greek version of Cinderella. There's also Asia has several versions of Cinderella. Yizan is the most famous, and I think that's the one that's in Giambattista Basile's book. And yeah, I was surprised how many versions of Cinderella Asia had. And it's just, this is the thing, and I'm so glad a friend of mine brought this up, is that the Brothers Grimm worked on uh it's believed that the Brothers Grimm wanted to create a national German identity with the stories they collected. And I mean, a lot of those stories, like Hansel and Gretel, can be found in so many other places. When I went down, I mean, it actually has a connection to the famous Minotaur story. The connection would be with the breadcrumbs. Okay? And Theseus with the thread, that's the connection. This is the thing you have to understand is that there is the oral tradition of storytelling. Okay? And the best way to put it would be the old game of telephone. And over the years, these stories change. You know, cultures put their own twist to them or everything else. These stories did not start in Europe, people. You can't do that. You can, okay. One thing that I mentioned was that because I did do a post and I said that the Brothers Grimm collected the stories that are in their book, and but unlike Hans Christian Andersen, who wrote The Little Mermaid and The Ugly Duckling. So we know who wrote those fairy tales. Okay, that is the difference. There are particular, and just like with Pinocchio, we know who wrote that story. Carl Collodi. I'm sorry if I say his name incorrectly. And I mean his story is from 1883. It's established who wrote Pinocchio. Okay, but like with Sleeping Beauty, it did not start with Tchaikovsky. No, it goes as far back, like I said earlier in the video, it goes as far back as the Middle Ages and probably further than that. Cinderella goes as far back as ancient times, as I said. And in the case of Snow White, Basil has a story about the Raven. Okay. Now in the Raven, let's see, where is it? There is a nobleman who sees a dead raven in the snow, and the contrast of red blood on white strikes him so much that he does not want anything more than a white-skinned, red-cheeked bride. Well, that sounds a lot like Snow White. And Basil released his book in the 1600s. Well, that's 200 years before um before the Brothers Grimm. Now, in the case of Hansel and Gretel, I was seeing so many different renditions. I fell down quite a rabbit hole with that. There were versions that had like the house was made of cheese. I don't remember what version that was. Because again, I felt there were there was also a version where the two kids were separated. One ended up swallowed by a magic fish, and the other child ended up they were he was I think it was the boy was found by a magic prince, and the the prince was actually captured by pirates, and they somehow were reunited and everything, and they ended up back home. Most of the stories, and I think that one is in Basil's book, but most of the stories were had some of the same, like a woodcutter's, an old woodcutter, and the wife didn't want the kids. The Russian version was a little scary. uh yeah, sending the child to Baba Yaga. And I believe that that's how you say it. But once I saw that, I was like, oh no, that's that's not good. And and then there were also versions that had an ogre instead of a witch. And in fact, the French version, I believe, had an ogre. And and so again, it's like a version of telephone where they change different. And in fact, oh gosh, years ago I did a video, I can't believe I remember now, as the story about how Saint Nicholas was a real person and how he has changed over the centuries. And I mean, everything about him has changed over this. It's the same kind of thing with these fairy tales. You know, and so we can't just decide that because of the Brothers Grimm with these stories that they were the ones that came up, they collected them, and they also praised Basil for his collection. I also want to mention um, Charles Perrault, and I'm sorry if I say his name incorrectly. He is or was a French author. He's known as laying the foundation for the genre fairy tale. He wrote a book that was titled Tales from the Past. I will put everything that I've talked about in the description box so you can take a look at it. Um, and his book actually became extremely popular. It was released in 1697. So in the late 1600s and early 1700s, it was considered these uh, fairy tales were considered fashionable among aristocrats. I don't know why I love that. So my just the idea that they would sit around and talk about these. I mean, like book clubs were extremely popular when I was a kid. I remember going to a couple with my mom, and the kids would be off in another room playing. And and the moms would read, they had read the book and then they would talk about them. And so the idea that they would be talking about such things as like Puss in Boots and Cinderella, it just, I don't know why that is. Bring it back. Make it fashionable again. Instead of making them so damn problematic. They're not problematic. The fact that the Disney Corporation and somebody like Rachel Zegler and these particular people who these these people pulling Antoine's are saying, well, it's problematic to me, so it has to be problematic for you, and we're gonna fix it. No, no, these stories have been around forever. Okay, Aesop's fables, like Disney did Bug's Life. Okay. And I still love Bug's Life. The, it's just and the morals still stick to this day. Slow and steady wins the race. Seriously, if they didn't do a rush job on a lot of these movies, we'd probably enjoy them. Don't rush the CGI and it'll look good. The fact that the CGI and special effects in Rocketeer look better than what they're pumping out now. Yeah. So the slow and steady wins the race. But don't lie. Well, the fact that a lot of these, well, the Cowboy Bebop actress lied and it backfired on her. And yeah, and there's a lot of people who are exposed for lying and it doesn't work so well. It just you just go down the list of the morals that these have. I said it in that modernizing Odyssey, and I'll say it here. When you put ideologies, when you inject them into a story and it doesn't fit there, it doesn't work. It never works. Just tell the story. And why are you adding on your fan fiction? I want to close up with that real quick. Okay, so Disney did Maleficent and then added on the sequel to that. I did a bunch of research to see if maybe there was, in fact, a backstory to Maleficent because there is a backstory. Dodie Smith wrote a backstory for Cruella de Vil, and it's not the one that you saw with Emma Stone. No. No. Um, and that's probably why it bombed. Anyway, so I looked around and there there is zero evidence of any kind of backstory for anyone, like anyone who went after a prince in anywhere. So this is people are defending the fan fiction that Disney latches onto these. And it's like, why? Uh, They destroyed Maleficent. I mean, Maleficent was you go down the list of the female villains that Disney had, and she was one of the best. And now she's just a victim. Wow, Disney. Awesome. That's amazing. I, you don't need to know the backstory of characters. We were fine with not knowing the backstory of Han Solo. We were fine with not knowing the backstory of Boba Fett. Why do we need to know this? Why do we need to know this? And now there are people who are like, well, we have to know the backstory of a character that wasn't even in the movie. What happened to Jasmine's mom? Nobody cares. No, nobody cares except you. And it's like now they're wanting to push that, and it's like nobody cares. Okay? That's not an issue. It had no relevance to the story. Seriously, the fact that this is even why? Why is oh my gosh. It's so and that's the problem is because of things being injected into story and the fact that there are it's just gotten out of control. The stories are not just tell a story. Okay, they did that with Cinderella, and that's why Cinderella is so loved. But as soon as they started injecting things that didn't belong there, it went downhill. Okay, the first live action was 101 Dalmatians with Glenn Close. And I remember people, I was in high school when that one came out, and I just remember people said, it's not going to work, it's not going to work, it's not going to work. And it worked. I went and saw it in the theater with a bunch of friends, and one of my friends said, well, they didn't use the Canine Crunchies song, and that was the only problem he had with it. They told the story. The cast was great, the costuming was great, everything was, and and it's the same thing with Cinderella. Okay. And stop injecting diversity and inclusion into it. Diversity and inclusion already existed. And you know what? Yeah, I'm going to go into that and then I will officially close because diversity and inclusion already existed. Like, are you forgetting Brandy's Cinderella? That exists, people. Like when I was a kid, diversity and inclusion exists. My favorite movie, Newsies. Okay, there are two Newsies who are crippled. Their names say it all. Kid Blink and Crutchy. Okay, you look at the Newsies, black, white, Italian, Irish, you name it. They're Spanish, all of them. It's all there. Okay? And you look at the fantasy movies. You've got Princess Bride, you got a six-fingered man, you've got a giant, and, and Time Bandits, Willow, Sorsha was a badass. And again with Princess Bride, Buttercup, she stood up to her captors, both of them. Look what she did to Wesley before she realized it was Wesley. And she stood up to Humperdinck. Okay, I don't understand why it's like, well, women empowerment means you have to have a weapon in your hand. No. Oh my gosh. So women are brain dead unless they have a weapon in their hand. Then all of a sudden, women empowerment. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Yeah, that makes so much sense. Great. Oh gosh. Yeah, you just continue to go down the list of movies and TV and realize that diversity and inclusion was already there. And now that you're trying to shove it in our face, it's, it's really irritating. Okay, it was in our video games too. So I don't know. I don't know. I have nothing against diversity and inclusion because I grew up with it. Just the idea that it didn't exist until like 5, 10 years ago is just stupid. Absolutely stupid. It's like, well, I came up with it and so it's a new concept. No, that's not how it works. No, it's sorry. Life happened long before that. So I'm sorry. And open your eyes, people. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so the fairy tales are not problematic just because these people are saying that they are problematic. They're pulling an Antoine. And look, what they could easily do is just not watch these fairy tales or read the fairy tales or have anything to do with the fairy tales. Instead, they're going to destroy the fairy tales and be like, they have to conform to me. No, that's not how life works. Okay. That's not how it works at all. No, these stories that have been around since ancient times and have never changed shouldn't have to change now. Yeah, this is getting old. People trying to change everything to fit their needs. It's getting old. So, anyway, I'm going to close up here.